This episode is sponsored by JDAQA Software Testing, your scalable solution for manual, automated, security, and performance testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show.
This is The First Customer, hosted by Jay Agner.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name is Jay Agner. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Brad Kielinski, who I've been trying to get on the show for quite a while, and here he is. Brad, how are you, brother?
How's everyone doing? Hey, Jay. Thanks for having me.
My fellow Eagles fan here, fellow tech agency, whatever you want to call it, guy in Philadelphia. I think we have a lot of, great similarities. So I'm excited to have you on. So thanks for being on. Did you grow up in Philly? Where'd you grow up? And did that have an impact on you being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I grew up in Plymouth Meeting, about a mile away from Germantown Academy, and that's where my upbringing was.
And was anybody an entrepreneur as a kid? Did you grow up around your parents' business people? Like, how'd you get into business?
Yeah, I grew up, my uncle and aunt started a company out of their house, and then I saw that go from they were living in a split level. Then, employees started pouring into their house. They put an addition on. They got an office, and then I saw it go from, them to about 400 employees. And then I guess midlife, or I guess when I was a youngster, maybe in my teenage years, my father became an inventor. So I saw that set up from start to finish. And, it was all, it kind of drove me to see, how entrepreneurship worked, which was cool.
How do you become an inventor at that? Did he declare that's what he was going to do, is just invent shit? What does that
No,
mean?
he was working for his brother and just working in he was kind of like a warehouse guy, plant manager type. And would just sketch out things and have ideas all the time. Then eventually, founded the two-wheel wheelbarrow, and then found some other created some other inventions. And it's funny because we grew up not too far away from the guy who was the patent attorney for the Slinky. So it was kind of a cool thing. Met Michael Eisner, was one of the top 100 inventions. Went down at Disney World, so it was kind of cool to see not just my dad, but other people and other cool inventions. So it was kind of unique to see.
Oh, that's cool, man. That's I think that's what, at least most of our lives growing up, when we thought of business people and entrepreneurs, were people who made cool stuff and just invented things. And at some point that shifted into tech entrepreneur, I think. But for the longest time, they were just dudes with some great idea or some different idea, or even just a regular idea that was marketed really well. And it was just that's an interesting kind of era, I think, of invention and design and all that stuff. So that's very cool. Very cool. So tell me about IT pros. I mean, how did you get into doing tech recruiting? I mean, it's a very crowded space, and we've talked a little bit off air about that, just kind of ecosystem of very, it was a big thing. It kind of went away. It's a big thing. It kind of keeps coming back. And now it's big again. There's so many staffing, recruiting agencies. What got you into the space to begin with? And then we can talk about how you kind of carved out this really interesting space for yourself.
Yeah. So I started out, I was doing internships through grade school and high school and college, and just kind of doing IT, marketing, sales, putting cubicles together, wiring, whatever it was, just to kind of figure things out. And then I finally went to school for college for business administration with a focus on management information systems. So I was in the tech world, and then graduated, found a job in IT myself. And then the company was part of AIG. And then when that started crumbling down, there was 2,200 employees, and the CEO left, and I'm like, all right, the writing's on the wall. So I got recruited by a tech recruiting agency locally here, and they were recruiting me for one of their customers. And ultimately, they saw my last name, and one of the partners there grew up with my father. So he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, do you want to check out the tech recruiting side of things?" And it was less pay and more upside. And I thought, let me try it out. And do I want to be a CIO or CTO? And I don't think that was my cup of tea. And that's how I got into tech recruiting.
Who was your first customer? How'd you get started?
So before I started IT Pros, I worked for two tech recruiting agencies. And then my first customer was a company called XDM, which was ultimately acquired by Evolve IP. And what's interesting, before I started my business, I started a community called IT Pros Philadelphia in 2009. So that's where I leveraged a lot of connections to get the build up going. So in 2011, when I started IT Pros, we were kind of off to the races. So day one, inked an agreement. And then it was a few weeks, later, where they were interviewing our people, and then, starting to hire, a bunch of folks. And then, which was cool to see, because they were a small, business at the time, and, placing a lot of people there was kind of a cool experience.
I love the community to kind of funnel program there. Tell me a little bit about the community, like, and this was 2009, so it was what's
Yep.
that, 15 years ago? So that's like a lot of technology has come since then. So tell me about, like, how did you start a group in Philly in 2009? And like, was it all online? Was it like in person? Like, what was the point of people joining it?
Yeah. Well, so the whole concept was this was when LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn was founded in 2002, maybe or something like that. So I just throw it up on the LinkedIn groups, and I said, "Here's an easy way to join this thing." And then ultimately, we started. The whole concept was to learn, network, and grow with like-minded folks in the Philadelphia region. So then we would have events. They were typically like once a quarter, and we would put it at some like cool place somewhere in the Delaware Valley where people haven't been before. And then it just turned to just people coming out, and then just interacting, and then oh, what do you do? What do I do? And then it just turned into getting some new clients and growing from there. So that was a really good experience to, I mean, for anyone thinking about starting a company, just trying to build a community around what you're doing first, so people know who you are. That was a big
Mhm.
advantage for us.
I really, really, really do love that. I'm a huge community builder guy, and I never applied that to our business. I still want to very badly, and I think there's a big niche for a QA community here in Philadelphia. But it's a great idea, and it's a great. The only thing is, how did you? I mean, I guess as LinkedIn groups, it was like kind of low pressure, right? Like there was no sales to it. You're just like saying, "Hey, here's a place if you're an IT guy in Philly or girl in Philly, and you want to connect with other people, a place to do it."
Yeah, so like Meetup was popular back then. So like we were
Hmm.
competing with like some of like the more niche type, like within IT, like you have like the Java group, and you have the other really specific to like a smaller segment of IT.
Hmm.
But and then you had like Philly, Tech Meetup and New Philly Tech Meetup, and but it was really focusing on like the city of Philadelphia, where I mean, I live in the city and now I live in the suburbs, but there's way more tech that happens in the suburbs of Philadelphia than inside. But we would look to encapsulate both, kind of bring the whole Delaware Valley together versus just segments of Philadelphia, and not
Hmm.
focusing on the other, surrounding counties, and getting into Delaware and New Jersey and things of that nature. So that was more of like an all encompassing type thing versus like really just focusing on the city of Philadelphia.
And what happened to that group?
It's still going. We celebrate our 15th, like you just said, 15th, anniversary. We have over 4,000 members representing over 2,500 companies, and we now host in-person networking events each month. So that's still going. We took I took a break like during COVID. We did
Hmm.
more like online type stuff,
Yeah.
but we're back into the the in-person live networking type of stuff. And there's no sales pressure. Like I don't want a room full of 100 salespeople trying to sell to 30 tech people. So if a salesperson wants to come, they're more than welcome. But we encourage them to at least be a sponsor, or we figure something out so it's not an annoyance type of thing.
Right. And how do you? Well, I mean, that's. I mean, 4,000 members. That's a solid group. How do you have like measurables around deals that come from those events? Do you like know any sort of like, hey, if we do 10 of these events this year, we should get 5 new clients out of them?
Yeah, so we do 12 what I call signature events, and then from there we'll probably get somewhere between 4 and 5 new clients from that. And then, some of those could be like a one-off deal, but just one would, and the other thing is like we're not spending a tremendous amount of money.
Hmm.
It's just more of a time type of thing. And
Right.
then, ultimately it's, me going to all these different counties, which is fine because I grew up like in this area, but it's really not a lot of output, as far as, money and resources go, because it's just the
Hmm.
people that are joining, it's just sending, it out on LinkedIn, and then they join the event or the group. And then now they're part of that community. And then they
Hmm.
interact like outside of, just me being there, and so forth. So it's kind of cool to see.
No, I love that. That's awesome. I think that's great. And it's, I mean, it's as close to like a referral factory as you can make, right? Like referrals are
Yeah.
like, I love and hate referrals. Like I love them so much because they're no effort and they're, the barrier to entry is so low and it's already like, all the great things from it. And I just hate them because they're not scalable or really like reproducible. So I love like kind of your own little referral factory. That's
About
pretty
this
cool.
group is that like you get a bunch of job seekers there. You'll get some maybe new entrepreneurs that are starting out
Yep.
and looking for advice. So what's cool about the job seekers is that, can we help everyone get a job? No, because companies aren't going to spend a premium, just for anyone has a tech background. But you get to meet a lot of executives that are on the move, where you wouldn't really get FaceTime with them, otherwise. Because once
Right.
they land a job, then they're getting cold calls, emails all day long. When you catch them at the right time, then that's an easy way, because you're looking to help them as well. But
Yeah.
also they know who you are now. So when you do make that call, or when they think about, oh, I need to hire some people for my team, they think about IT pros.
I think of T Brad.
They think it's Pratt, right?
I think of T Brad. So how is I mean, so tell me about how the customer has changed from when you first started to today. Who was it when you started? Who is the customer today? And just kind of we can talk through. That's where a lot of the fun conversation comes in because we can talk about what happened, but talk about where they were to where they are now.
Yeah, so typically we would be chasing, or not even chasing, but we would be focusing on the venture-backed startup or the company that's the no-name company that's in the Delaware Valley region that really no one knows. Like we would stay away from the larger companies that everyone knows, right? If I were to ask you, can you name 15 companies in a certain county in the Delaware Valley? That's not a big name. That's hard to do. So
Right.
that's where those companies struggle, and really to struggle to tell their story. So that's where we come in to dive in and think about, okay, like you guys live and breathe your company, but how can we take someone out from another company, and then what are you offering and things of that nature. So we did that through the venture backed startups for a while. We still do a lot of that, but it's a lot of like the bootstrap companies that no one's heard of before, or it's
Hmm.
manufacturing companies that you don't think about how big manufacturing is in the Philadelphia region for the most part. But there's a lot of manufacturing companies where maybe they're not as exciting because you haven't heard of them before, but they have some cool stuff they're doing, modernizing their environment, things of that nature. But historically, we would take on anything really in the Philadelphia market, and then it expanded to not doing that, right? Like, so staying away from the larger companies that they want to pay a million years from now. They mess around with you. Like the terms and conditions are just so skewed in their favor.
Right.
We just stay away, from them, and really focusing on the more, agile, fast moving, where it's more exciting for people to hear about. Or it's, like the manufacturing companies, that we carve kind of like a nice segment out of. But the customer has gone from pretty much how we started to today. We just eliminated a lot of the bigger names that, just take too long and aren't as exciting as some of these faster, growth companies.
How did you scale the business beyond yourself when it comes to, operations, sales, finance, etc.? Like when you first started, how did you go from T Brad to T Brad and team?
Right. So it took me about 3 deals to hire another recruiter. So for me to get out of the weeds, I needed to get out of, the day-to-day of the recruitment function. So it's starting out with someone that's talking to the customer, talking to the candidates that we're, targeting, and so forth. And then it's bringing in a sourcing team. These are the people that are doing all the research, and, scaling that, looking at operating a 24/7 environment. So looking at the time zones the world has to offer, and see, okay, how can we do 24/7, not just hiring people in Philadelphia that, everyone wakes up and goes to sleep at the same time. So when that person here in Philadelphia is working, they have a solid pipeline to go after. So that's a big competitive advantage of doing that. And then hiring someone that knows the operations piece, more of a, the business mind, and allowing
Mhm.
me to do more of the innovation and, the major implementations that we need to run the business versus, me, constantly, doing a lot of the recruiting activity. But sometimes I still get some of that because I'm talking to the founders and they want to talk to the person who runs the show, which is
Right.
fine.
Yep.
But then, delegating that is a big, aspect of, operating a business like this.
Yes. And I think that's why most business coaches exist is for that like initial like how to get out from under yourself phase, which is why there's probably 100 million business coaches and 100 million people that are at that point where they can't quite figure out how to get from under their business, and like the ones that do are like the ones can scale it up. So tell me a little bit about personal brand. I mean, tongue in cheek was saying T Brad, obviously, but I mean, for the most part, like you do have a very clean, very like well kind of curated public image, I would say, from LinkedIn and Google and everything else. Like, what does personal brand mean to you, and like how do you kind of mix that in and out with IT Bros brand, versus yourself?
It's just kind of thinking of the perception of how others would perceive me, because like when we're looking at other companies, right, it's so interesting to see like when my team says, like, I'm not really sure what they do. Like we'll go on their website and it'll say that they're a computer software company. But then we're looking through, like we still don't know, and we'll spend a couple of minutes. We still have no idea what the heck they're doing, like,
Right.
because like they're making it so complex with a whole bunch of BS words and adjectives, or maybe being too sophisticated. Like if my 7-year-old son, like if he doesn't know what I'm doing, like that's a problem. So like we want it to be that simple. So when people think about, okay, what does Brad Kielinski do? It's tech recruiting in the Delaware and Lehigh Valley region, and looking at it from, okay, can he help me get a job, and or can he help me hire some people? And that's really, it's been, a lot of years just thinking through that and, asking people, like, even when I'm on LinkedIn, sometimes I'll say, like, how would you improve my profile? So it gets eyeballs to, my personal brand, but you also
Mhm.
get some key aspects of, like, just ask the people that are following you, like, what would they want to see that's better, or that's, that's too difficult to understand, and just kind of
Mhm.
dumbing it down so people, understand it. But the other thing, like, it's separating myself from, like, IT pros. So IT pros has more followers now than me. And that was a problem early on where it was just me, and, like, IT pros was like a second thought, or, like, an afterthought of, just dealing with me. But to be able to scale a business, they need to think of IT pros, not so much, me at the forefront. But, it's just really just thinking through those things, and, the complexities and just the perceptions. And I think, still it's a work in progress, but I'm hoping that it's, in the right direction.
Tell me about a big fuck up, a big failure, whether we're sourcing clients or with the client relationship, whatever, and then what'd you do after that?
Yeah. So let me think about, we had, it's kind of funny because there was a company that actually was acquired, and this is the first interaction. They were looking to hire a chief product officer from us. We supplied the chief product officer, and actually, this, I don't want to give any names away here, but it wasn't too far away from where I grew up, so I knew exactly where the building was. I knew it was near a floodplain. I knew, like, all these things. And I actually asked those questions, like, where would they park when it floods and things of that nature. But I didn't have a chance to actually go to the office. This was like earlier days. So the chief product officer gets there, she gets hired, everything's great. And then, so we have a 90-day guarantee. And day 89, the owner of the company calls up, says, listen, we need to, terminate this person. And I was, quite frankly, pissed off. But here to find out that the company was getting acquired, and she just didn't want to, have to, pay the fee.
Hmm.
So I told her, I said, we're not replacing this, because this isn't a termination based on performance. This is just because you're getting acquired and you just want to save whatever amount of money they were paying.
Right.
And looking back on that, like, those types of interactions, like, although how I could get pissed off at those, like, sometimes that trickles down, like, where that person that was acquired, like, she's now working somewhere out. Like, she's an entrepreneur, she's a founder. And it's just like, if she knew you, hey, what are your thoughts on IT pros? It's like, well, they suck. No matter how many placements we make, it's like those types of things.
Right.
Like, we're terrible. Like, we don't know what we're
Right.
doing. No matter, we could
Yeah.
have 5 million placements, and, like, that's a lesson learned. Like, where that reputation is, like, the biggest thing. And, it's sometimes not worth trying to save the 40, 50 grand fee that the company's paying for, because
Right.
you may lose out on, hundreds, if not millions of dollars in future business because of that.
Yeah, that's a great one. What would you do if you had to start over tomorrow? Like everything you know what kind of business you want to start. Hey, I'm been in staffing. I want to start my IT pros company. What's step one tomorrow for you to start the business?
It's honestly the same thing that I did. I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, and that was part of my problem before I started, my business. I thought I knew it, and one of the partners was like, "Dude, you got to settle down. Like, you don't know jack right now." But it would still be the community first, and then, like, and the thing, I would probably have sped up that process a bit, like really focusing more on the community. It was kind of like moving at a snail's pace, and then I eventually was like, all right, let's get this thing moving. And then, just not like, I didn't have VAs, or I should have gotten more of those types of people to help with that. Just
Mhm.
more, day to day, where you put the playbook together for them. It's just like plug and play. It's like, you don't really need to think a lot. Like, I was doing a lot of that stuff. I would have delegated that much sooner to set the business up. So when I was working somewhere else and then, departed, I could then set it up and, get moving much quicker than what I did. But there really is not much there outside of more delegation early on, because
Mhm.
I went in knowing the tech recruiting bit. It's not like I jumped into a business I wasn't familiar with, because I
Right.
was working at two other, recruiting companies before, and then just taking what they weren't doing, and what I wanted to do for my own business.
A while, and I probably have you back on just because I feel like we could talk for probably 3 episodes worth. I got one more question for you though, non-business related. This is
Mhm.
just for Brad being Brad. If you could do anything on earth and you knew you wouldn't fail, what would it be?
Um, it would just be able to cure, like, uncurable diseases. Just focusing in on stuff that, like, for humanity, like, it would just benefit all humanity. So, like, that would really be it. I mean, it's just like helping people that. And also, it would be to try to do it in a way where it's somehow, like, it's not out of pocket to the general, person.
Right.
So that would be it.
Well, you can't fail, so that sounds like a great one. I like that. All right. Well, if people want to find more about you, Brad, or about IT pros, where do they do that?
LinkedIn's the main place I hang out. So, feel free just to connect with me on there, or follow IT pros, and, that'll be the spot to go.
Beautiful. All right, brother. Well, I think we have lunch coming up, so I'll see you again soon. But
Yeah,
it
I'll
was
feed you.
great getting to talk to you for a little bit, and I hope you have a good rest of your week. Thanks, buddy. See
Yeah.
ya.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, man.
See ya.